being nagged, what are some things you can do? They're driving you crazy. Oh, you just need clarification, don't have an answer. All right.
I'll tell them to be patient.
All right, tell them to be patient. What else can you do? You got one behind you. Hang on. I'm gonna see it's the same people every time though.
One-on-one quiet house and give them a prize afterwards.
Okay. Didn't see your hand.
Maybe like we could try to occupy them with something.
Occupy them with something.
Try to understand why they might be nagging you.
Okay. Understand why the nagging. Maybe they want to know when you're going to the pool because that's all they want to do. All right. One of the other best things you could do for a kid, particularly if that description, like, when are we doing something? What are we doing? Put them in charge of the schedule and give them a time, like, hey, bring a watch tomorrow. You can keep track for us. Because now it's their job, so they don't need to nag anybody but themselves. And they can be the one that reports. You're asking them, hey, what time do we go to the pool? And you can switch it, basically switch it up. All right? Did you guys get a chance to write down some of these things on page 24?
Yes.
Ed, do you have my clicker? It would also help if I switch it back to slides. So this next slide is on,
The same page.
is it the same page? Thank you. On the same page. We put this in here because at some point in our lives, we've all been called one of these things. We've been called bossy, defiant, demanding, dramatic. Some of these things were on the list you guys just gave, right? Fearful, hyperactive, impulsive, oppositional, rebellious. And all of those words focus on the problem. Do you see that? So just like a lot of the words you guys put up there and somebody said they're negative, they focus on the problem I perceive to be happening right now. But when we fix it and flip it to the solution, it changes our perspective of the behavior. You guys hear that? When we flip it to focus on the solution, it changes the perspective on the behavior. So for example, a bossy kid is actually a natural leader. They could be a visionary. They could see that, hey, we're supposed to be doing this right now and we're not. We're off schedule. I'm upset. I'm gonna speak up. And so how do we harness that natural talent that they have in a positive way so it doesn't come out in a negative way? Similarly, a kid who is fearful could be praised for being cautious. So instead of a camp counselor saying, it's okay, you don't have to be afraid, and we're telling them to don't be, that it's okay to be cautious. You don't have to jump in the deep end. Not all the kids have to go. You don't have to, if your camp has a slide, you don't have to go down the slide, it's okay. You can be cautious. Being cautious is smart sometimes, right? The kids who are gonna look both ways 3 times before crossing the street are safer than the ones who are gonna run right out into it. But you're making it so their behavior is okay. How do you make it okay? How do you turn that into some kind of praise for them that allows them to not feel like, especially when the other kids are like making fun of them, right? Talking about the slide, and everybody's like, oh, you're scared, you're not going. No, it's okay, I'm cautious. And it's okay to be cautious. Kids who are stubborn, they're persistent, they're determined, they're steadfast, they know what they want. How amazing to have an 8-year-old who knows what they want. The rest of them are going to sit there and stare at you and go, I don't know. What game do you want to play today? I don't know. And they're going to expect you to just tell them because that's what they're used to being done, right? But kids who are stubborn, sometimes they know what they want. That talkative kid that never, ever, ever stops is a phenomenal communicator. And they're going to go tons of places. They might be the newscaster someday. They might be the one up running the stuff. Your tattletales respect rules. So the whole point of this chart is to remind you that when you're seeing a behavior that you perceive as negative or annoying or bad behavior that we need to report on. It's asking you to remember this and to take a pause and think about whether that is truly negative behavior or if it's really the child's way of communicating and something that you could actually praise. Think about the Mr. Jensen in the video this morning, right? I'm a kid who can't sit still, I'm always tapping my desk, I'm annoying everybody, everybody's telling me I'm bad, 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 bad. But Mr. Jensen said, actually, you're a drummer. And now he's legit a drummer, like on stages all over the world. But if no one had ever said that to him, he might have grown up and just been bad. All the time, annoying, irritating, and all of those things. And so it's your job to kind of find the drummers in your group and help them find their way. Help them find what makes them special or different. I am the mom of a bossy kid, okay? Some of you that work for me will meet her this summer. She is bossy. This morning at my house, Summer Collab, we don't have a big office. We have an office, but it's on the 7th floor of a building, so receiving supplies for camp is problematic. So all the supplies are coming to my house. They're in my garage, and our camp director had to come today while I was here with a big old truck to load it. And my bossy kid calls and says, don't worry, Mom, I got a plan. I know exactly how we're loading the truck, and no, he's not gonna do it right, so I got it. I'm gonna tell him what we're doing, okay? And the mom in me has to remember that when she was 8, somebody said she was gonna be a leader someday. Our little bossy kids who wanna tell all of us that we're doing our jobs wrong are gonna run the world, and they're gonna run it better than the rest of us. And they're not afraid at 16 years old to say, I got it, that 35-year-old does not know how to load a truck, and I'm gonna do it. And it's gonna make things better. So remember that about your kids as you're doing it. Can you advance it? All right. So this is a little bit, we've been talking about throughout training about catch you at your best. This is somebody who can explain it better than me. So we're gonna watch a little video.
Heard teachers say
Here you go.
they've got a student who's so bad that they can't teach them. And in fact, nobody could teach that student, and they're ruining their class. Well, if you've sat in a teacher's office for long enough, I'm guessing you've heard that before. You might have even said it yourself. I know I have. Well, the good news is that it's not actually true. And there are many things that we as teachers can do to help our students improve their behavior. And that help starts with a little acronym called CBG. So if you're interested in helping your students improve their behavior, keep watching. Welcome to Start Teacher Training. This is the channel for EFL teachers with large classes of preschool and primary school students. My name is Will, and over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with more teachers than I can recall who at one time or another claimed that they had a class or a student who was so terrible that nobody could teach them and nobody could work with them. However, in my experience, 9 times out of 10, those teachers were wrong, and there was something that they could do to help their students to improve their behavior. Or if not that teacher, some other teacher could go in and do things that would help their students perform better. And the key to that improvement in many cases was a concept called Catch Them Being Good, or CBG. And I want to take a quick moment just to thank Carol Reed and her website for introducing this concept to me years ago and really helping me to improve the way that I work with my students and the way that I teach in general. Now, to understand CBG, let's first look at its opposite, catch them being bad. This is the mindset that I had when I first started teaching years ago. And in this mindset, I wanted to catch and control any small mistake that my students made. So I wanted to have eyes in the back of my head. Unfortunately though, this turned me oftentimes into the class police officer, where I thought of my class as being filled with little criminals, all committing crimes that I had to catch. And nobody likes to actually get caught for doing something bad. And so oftentimes, I became the bad cop of the classroom. And my relationship with my students turned really negative, so that any slightly difficult class that I had often just became a mess of more and more bad behavior and difficult controlling my students. Over the years, this mindset did not work for me, and it didn't work for many of the teachers that I worked alongside with. Fortunately, my teaching satisfaction greatly improved when I learned about Catch Them Being Good. And to understand CBG, we also really need to understand that students, and really everyone, want to have positive relationships with the people around us. And those positive relationships are based on things like love and respect, understanding, and acceptance. And to build these things, we need to do things like support and encourage each other, listen to each other, and trust each other. And on the other hand, we can undermine our positive relationships by doing things like criticizing or blaming people, complaining or nagging, also punishing other people, or bribing them to control their behavior. So from that list, you can see that there were probably a lot of things that I was doing to undermine my relationships with my students. And the teachers around me were also doing the same thing. We were getting really good at catching our students being bad. But unfortunately, that was really making things worse. So in CBG, instead of looking for what our students are doing wrong, we should be looking for what they're doing well, looking for those good behaviors. Because remember, our students want positive attention and they want positive relationships with us. So if they see that we are giving positive attention to the good behaviors, they will do more of those. Now, this can be really hard though for new teachers because the bad behaviors are the ones that get the strongest emotional reaction from us. When we see students pushing each other or shouting or playing with toys during an activity and not paying attention, that gets a strong reaction from us and we want to respond. It's a lot more useful though, and a lot harder to take notice of the good behaviors. Basic things like sitting in their chairs, following along, or participating nicely with their classmates. We often take these kind of behaviors for granted because they're just basic good behavior, right? Do we really have to praise for that? But actually, in life, the things that we take for granted are usually things that we over time lose. So we don't want to take good behavior for granted. We want to acknowledge it. So when you do see a student behaving well, then make a mental note of it and then show your students that you noticed it. Do things like nodding to them, smiling, giving a thumbs up, or just making warm, positive eye contact with that student. And if you have a little extra time, you could go over and give them a quick word of praise, good job, or I'm happy to see you working. Now in a big class, you're probably not going to be able to catch each and every one of your students being good, because there are just too many of them. But you can get to a pretty good percentage. And you can do things like praise the whole class for general good behavior. Also, you want to identify specific students who struggle to behave well in your class, and then make extra efforts to catch those students being good, because they're the ones who need it the most. In addition, you want to remember to be proactive and not reactive. When you're reactive, you're waiting for opportunities to catch your students being good. But when you're proactive, you're creating those opportunities, especially early in your class. This could look like right when you walk into the classroom, scan the room, and then find a student who struggles to behave well. Smile and walk up to them and say hi. And then find other opportunities to show them that you see them and you see the effort that they're putting into your classroom. Then you can take other times in your free time to just build a better rapport with that student. Remember, CBG is about building positive relationships with your students because those positive relationships encourage them to do better in your class. Finally, will CBG turn your terrible classes and your challenging students into perfect little angels? Probably not. Nobody is perfect, but you should see progress in their behavior over time. Over the years, I've worked with many teachers who went from wanting to quit their classes because of some challenging student to getting along really nicely with those students, thanks to CBG. It's not easy though. It requires conscious effort and change in a lot of habits. It's also not always easy to get along with and be friendly with the students who make our classes really difficult. But in my opinion, it really beats hating going to class each week because you have a terrible class. Instead, you can improve your students and your classes. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video and found it to be useful, don't forget to click like and subscribe. And in the comment section below.
All right. So a little story about catching kids at their best and like real world outcomes. So for 15 years, I worked at the Walnut Street Y in Wilmington. And we had our share of behaviors. Just like any other camp in the city, we had kids that came from all walks of life, all kinds of behavior problems. And one of the things we were really adamant about there was making sure parents knew about their kids' behavior. And so when I first started there, they had this system where they had like carbon copy papers where we wrote up reports. And they were always behavior reports, and they were always negative. And at the end of the day, they were like on the table and like covering the table because we had a lot of kids. And the parents would walk up and they would be like, oh, my kid's name is on the table. So the parent is coming in from a long day to bad news. They know it's bad news because they see their kid's name. And the kids are constantly getting written up, but nothing else. And one of our camp staff, who's still there, I think, as one of the administrators now, came up with this idea that we should do more with Caught You at Your Best. And they made second forms that looked just like the first ones, but were positive. And so now when the parents came, they didn't know if the paper was good or bad on the table. And the kids started wanting to get caught. They wanted to get caught to tell their parent they did something well. And we had a trainer come in that encouraged them to do more of that. And early in the summer, they started out with a lot of energy like you guys are gonna have, right? They went in and I'm gonna look for the positive, I'm gonna find the positive. And everything that was coming down from parents was this amazing stuff with one or two things that we needed to tell that happened that were important enough to go home that were negative. But as the weeks went on and we got to like the middle of July and it was hot and we're tired, we as administrators started to notice that that table was becoming more and more and more filled with negative. And our staff were dragging and were calling out and all kinds of stuff were happening. And so we pulled a staff meeting, we brought that trainer back in and we talked about it. And he said, you know what I see happening? Is you stopped looking for the positive. And your kids noticed. And when you stopped, their behavior changed. They no longer felt like they were being recognized for doing well. And the only way they could get attention and feel like us, were seeing them was by misbehaving. And so he challenged the group, go out tomorrow and I want you to write a positive note for every single kid. The momentum, the energy, everything changed. Those kids came back happy, the staff came back happy. I can tell you that the video is not wrong. You have to do this intentionally. None of us, we are all raised to look for the negative, right? We're raised to, like, the room's not clean enough, it's not enough, whatever it is, not right enough. And then he just said, like, nobody's perfect. But we're just constantly in school, at home, talking about what we did wrong. But if you can switch that, if you can consciously say, I'm gonna walk in and find something right about every kid, about every activity, all of those things this summer, you will have a summer like no other. Your kids will be walking behind you like an army of champions who only want to be with you because they know you've seen the good stuff in them, maybe the stuff that nobody else has seen, but you've got to do it intentionally. I can't emphasize that enough. It does not come naturally. Sometimes you have to do it very intentionally. Did I tell you guys about my first camp group, or was that just one person? So my first year as a camp counselor a lifetime ago, I was a special ed major in college, which meant that I had completed my freshman year of college. I had taken a bunch of general education courses, and somewhere on my transcript it said I was special ed. Okay? Hadn't taken an education class, nothing. But I had special ed on my transcript, right? And I get to camp and go through the whole training like you guys are doing, and the first day I'm all excited, I show up in the gym and somebody else passes out the roster and hands it to me and says, let me look at the kids you got. And she looks over my shoulder and all she says is, they want you to quit. What do you mean? They gave me every single 10-year-old boys and girls who was on medication in the camp. Every single one. They all had different special needs. My first year, I had not worked with kids. I was a camper myself, but that was it. Had no training, nothing. Every single kid, different diagnoses, and you guys laugh. I had a kid in my group named Ralph. I don't know what Ralph's diagnosis was because I wasn't a doctor, right? But Ralph had this thing where he got stressed out, he would turn into a dog and bark at trees.
What?
Yes, so So I had to learn how to take care of Ralph, and I also had a little boy named Jeff, who when he got upset, he was an eloper. Do you guys know what that means? They run away. Every camp has one. I was blessed as a parent to be raising an eloper, so I had a lot of experience as a camp counselor that prepared me for adulthood with my own child. But I had this very diverse group of kids, and we had to work really, really hard together to get through some stuff those first couple days. And I will tell you, there was a day like Wednesday, the first week, where I was like, this was an all outdoor camp, and I was sitting in the field like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And the camp director came up and just said, you got this, you're doing a great job. I was probably this close to saying, I'm not coming back tomorrow. And all it took was one person to say, you're doing a great job, you've got this, to make me say, you know what, I can get up tomorrow and try again. And we can do the same thing for our kids. I believe very firmly that nobody is going to have a group like that. We've gotten smarter as camp directors. We've recognized that inclusion and spreading the kids out is much better than lumping them all together. I was 19, so just finished my freshman year in college. I was 19 for that group. It was my first summer supervising kids. Prior to that, before that, my work experience was almost entirely working like professional baseball games as an usher. So, like you go to the Phillies and there's somebody who seats you. That was all my work experience was prior to that. So, I share all that to say, one, if your camp director does that to you, advocate for yourself, because I didn't. But two, to say that even when you're given the most difficult group of kids, that was and always will be my favorite group of campers. Because we got through so much together that summer. And we found ways to make it positive, and we found ways to accept each other as it was. So I talked about Ralph and he barked at trees. By the end of the summer, all the kids were like, oh, Ralph's barking at the trees again, he just needs a moment. And it wasn't name calling or any of those other things. They just said, you know what, I get it. You guys all wait for me when I run away. You wait for me when, I had a girl in my group, she was like this tall, like huge, a 10. And she only wore pants to camp and complained all summer long about being hot. And so that was her thing, but she understood. Everybody got to a point that they were like, Amanda's gonna complain about being hot today. But all of that is just to share that you can find something positive in every single one of those kids every single day, even in your hardest kid. You know, it might just be for Jeff and my group who ran away. You know what, you did a really good job all morning of staying with the group even though I saw you get frustrated. And that might be more meaningful to him than any other positive comment I would make to somebody else because of how hard it was for him to stay. So it's getting to know your kids, getting to know how you can give that positive feedback for them. Is this you? All right, thank you.
So hitting up on some of the Christina stories, positive reinforcement involves the addition of reinforcing stimulus following a behavior that makes it more likely the behavior will occur again in the future. Usually we want to reinforce the positive behavior. When a favorable outcome, event, or reward occurs after the action, hence the reinforcement, that response or behavior will be strengthened, be more likely to continue. So with that, at your group, your table groups, I need you to open to page 25 in your workbook. And I want you guys as a group list 3 to 5 ways to give positive reinforcement.
Prizes or positive feedback.
You said a quick word of praise or a shout out.
Are you guys catching what they're saying? You should be learning from them. Shouldn't be so much chatter. You should be able to hear what's going on.
Praise them in front of their parents or make a prize and candy box.
All right, I'm gonna wait a minute before we move on to the next part. Give everyone a chance to come back to their seats.
Giving them chances.
With all behaviors, known as triggers. Triggers are usually an event or situation that happens before behavior that causes it to happen. Triggers can lead to good behaviors or bad behaviors. Here's what I need from you guys individually now. At your groups, there should still be sticky notes on your table. If not, raise your hand if you need some more. I want you guys to list as many as you can on the sticky notes. And then you're going to come up and you're going to stick them between the two chairs on that blue wall. If you need sticky notes, raise your hand. We'll be around to drop off some more. Or the way they talk to you. Other peers, yelling, favoritism, unfair situations, mean comments, not giving attention, lack of sleep, hunger, change, negative memories, being yelled at, tapping or loud noises, and overloaded questions, heat, anxiety, anger, body shame, stress, again, jealousy, breaking things, teasing, threatening to call parents, a change in schedule, life, or routines, being excluded, fighting, losing at a game, crowds, loud chewing. I think that's pretty much, I got cursing and bullying again, rude tones, negative attitudes, but for the most part, you all are hitting the nail on the head. As we said yesterday, your campers will be more willing to do something if you are also willing to do it. You can't tell someone to go do something you won't do. It just don't work. Use a calm voice and tone when you're talking to these children. Remember, they're people too. You don't like being yelled at. I'm sure they don't either. Let students help set the rules. They want to camp every week, every Monday. Go over the rules. You'll have new campers join your group throughout the summer. Let them have a say. Take flip chart. Take a sheet of paper on your clipboard. Have them be included in the rule making, and they'll feel included with it and want to follow their rules more. Going back with the rules, keep it documented. Keep it with you so that they can see what they created with you. Encourage initiative. Encourage them to be the leaders of the group. It's not always just you guys leading the show. Especially as you guys work with older kids, they'll want to take that lead role. Offer them praise. Use nonverbal communication. Thumbs up, smiles, something. Let them know that you're watching without necessarily saying it. Hold parties. If your camp group's doing well, do something outside the box. Have a lunch party. Lunch party, so depending on your camp group, for example, you can ask to do certain things to reward them. Some things out of the box. I said lunch parties, some things I've done, I'm thinking the school age aspect now. One of the classroom management systems we do is we work for pizza parties. There's other ways to do it. You can have some days where if they work really well, then you change your activity and do something that they want to do. Give tangible rewards. Pleasantly surprise parents, like Christina said. Tell them the good stuff. The one key piece of advice I can give you, if you interact with parents, never have that first conversation you have with a parent be about something negative, because that'll be the outlook they have on you for the rest of the summer. Try to always make that first contact be about something good. If you have to talk to parents, if it's in your responsibilities too, which it will vary from camp to camp, Try to make that first week some reason to call a parent or meet a parent and tell them something good their camper did. It'll set the tone the rest of the summer, and it'll keep you in good graces with the parents. Build excitement for activities. You can't just say, well, we're going to go play North South Central in the heat today. You got to build it up. You got to make it exciting for them. You got to bring the enthusiasm so that way they want to do it. Correct behavior in the moment. Don't put something off. If someone did something wrong, don't say, I'll talk to them after lunch or I'll talk to them after the game. Pull them to the side and address it then. Don't scream or yell at kids. It will get you nowhere. Don't punish the entire group for the actions of one camper. Don't discipline when you're angry. Remember, it comes back to the dude talking in a calm voice and tone. Don't single out or embarrass a child. I guarantee you, none of you would want to be singled out and put on the spot. The campers don't either. Don't use physical activity as a consequence. Don't say, well, because you did this wrong, you don't get to play on the playground today. You don't get to go swimming. Don't do that. Don't strip them of this incentive for them.
Or don't make them run laps, or all those things that coaches or other people might have made you do for physical activity. Physical activity in Delaware cannot be used as a consequence. You can't say, if you're not listening to me, the whole group has to go run laps. That would be illegal.
Also, don't withhold food or bathroom access. Those are basic necessities. You can't tell them no for that.
You can't even make them last in line for lunch. You can't say you're going to get your lunch last because you weren't doing something.
Don't touch the child while disciplining. There are multiple different reasons for this one. Most importantly, your safety. Should never really be touching a child unless it's absolutely needed or life-threatening. Don't take away a favorite activity later in the day. This will do nothing but build resentment.
Hang on, can I say
Go
something?
back.
I'm going to ask about that one. Guys, what happens if it's 9:30 in the morning, I've done something so bad that you tell me I can't go swimming at 1 o'clock this afternoon? What happens? I'm going to keep acting up, right? Because what did you just do? I took it away. You already took away my favorite activity. Game on. Cool. I'm in. I can do whatever I want the rest of the day because you can't do anything worse to me than what you just did. And what I see a lot of young camp counselors say is, oh, you lost swimming, but if you're really good, you can earn it back. And then I see them not let the kids earn it back. Don't promise them something you don't mean to do, but don't even do it in the first place. Don't take it away. Because when you take it away, the emotional response at that point is going to jump off the cliff. The kid is gone. You've lost them. They're not coming back. And if we get upset when we get in trouble, little kids can't self-regulate enough to fix that. Right? I already lost my favorite thing. So now you're telling me I need to fix all these emotions that I don't even understand and whatever, and then I have to earn it back. What does that mean? Don't take it away. The consequence for whatever just happened needs to be now. So if I just did something inappropriate, I need to be talked to now. If your camp allows for time out, in Delaware, if you use time out, it can be no longer than 1 minute per year of age for the child. So 1 minute per year of age. If I have a 5-year-old child, what is the longest time out I can give them? 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Do you guys know how long 5 minutes is for a 5-year-old? It's like a lifetime. And you're asking a kid who's already having a hard time behaving to go over there, don't do anything, don't entertain yourself, and sit quietly for 5 minutes. It is a lifetime. Timeout should be your absolute last resort. But if you are going to do it in the state of Delaware, 1 minute per year of age. That's not me giving you permission to put a 12-year-old in timeout for 12 minutes. You are asking for failure. It doesn't work. But the consequence for whatever the misbehavior was, whatever you felt like was so important to interrupt and address, to make them safe and to keep the group moving forward, to correct whatever they might have said to somebody else, that consequence needs to happen now. It needs, the conversation, whatever that is, needs to be in the moment. And it definitely shouldn't be a surprise to the kid at the end of the day if you're talking to their parent. Right? At the end of the day, they should know I was talked to 12 times and I know what they're talking about, versus me coming to a parent and saying, yeah, I had a really hard time with your kid today, blah, 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 blah. And the kid gets in the car and is like, they never said anything. Because that's not fair to them either.
And with that, you have to make sure you follow up. You have to mean what you say and say what you mean. You can't tell the kid, I'm gonna talk to your parents later today after talking to them, and then forget to do it. Because what does that tell little Sally if you said, I'm gonna talk to your mom, and then you didn't talk to your mom at the end of the day? She's gonna do it again tomorrow because she knows you're not gonna talk to her mom. The one time you slip up is the one time that it takes. If you need to make a note, set a time or something. Whatever you say you're going to do, you have to mean by it and do what you're gonna say. I didn't realize you guys were writing this down, and I kind of went fast. So if you guys still need a minute, just let me know, or we can flip to the next slide. Okay. Addressing a behavior, ask yourself these questions. What was I doing? As a counselor, what were you doing when the behavior was taking place? Could you have helped avoid it?
Were you on your phone?
Were you on your phone? Were you watching? What activity was the group doing? Do you know the whole story, or are you just reacting to a report from one child? Did you talk to both parties, all three parties? Did you talk to your co-counselor? Maybe they saw something you didn't. What else could be going on? Could it be something that maybe just one camper doesn't like another and is trying to get them set up? Were you engaging the child and aware of what was going on? Were you participating with the group essentially? Were you playing the game? Were you being the counselor? How will the parent feel when they hear about this issue? What else can you do to change the behavior? And should you get help with behavior? Is it unsafe, overly disruptive? Do you need a break? All these tie back into the do's and don'ts. That last bit, do you need a break? Think about what we said. Talk to the children in calm voices, calm tones. Don't discipline while you're angry. If you're angry or upset about the situation that happened, do you need a co-counselor to take over while you recollect yourself to address what happened? Are they able to take the lead on this so you can take a minute out? Don't be afraid to lean on your co-counselor.
It's just reminding me that I didn't used to do this in training, but I feel the need to. All too often as camp directors, we drill into you guys that it is never okay to leave a group of kids unsupervised. This gets me emotional. There is one time that you are allowed to leave a group unsupervised. My permission. It's when doing so is safer for the kids. And I say that because a couple of years ago, a young adult who was 18 working in a child care center in Newark went to work one morning. She didn't intend to hurt a kid. She didn't intend to kill a kid. But she did. It was a baby, and she smothered him. But she was trained that she can never leave the room, that the kids can't be unsupervised. And so now in training, I want you to know, it may mean you don't have a job tomorrow, okay? It may mean if you go to your supervisor and say, I couldn't do it, I had to leave the group unsupervised, it might have a negative consequence for you, but you won't have hurt a child. Does this make sense? Because no one told her that. So a family is irrevocably, whatever that word is, changed, right? Their baby did not go home with them that night. But her life was also changed, and you guys are all my responsibility. Okay? Losing a job, okay, that sucks, great. I found out I didn't like working with kids. Even more important, especially if you're in a teacher academy and you think you want to work with kids. But more importantly, you're not in jail, your life's not changed. Because I looked at those news stories and everybody wanted to vilify her. And I looked at it and said, we failed. The adults in the room, the child care directors in the room, we failed. She was set up. She was set up in an environment where she didn't feel like she had support. She didn't have anybody she could call. She probably wasn't properly trained. I don't even know her. I don't know all the rest of the details, but I can tell that just from being in the field. And so if there is a moment in time when you're doing discipline and you feel that coming, and you're like, I can't, something is going to happen, walk away. leave them. Leave them unsupervised, go get help. Don't leave them, don't just walk out of the building, go tell somebody, somebody's gotta take this group. But that is the one time that you can leave kids unsupervised, is if it's safer for them to be unsupervised in that moment than to be with you. Okay, and I know that's heavy, but it's really, really important that you know that. Because I don't wanna see any of you in the news, ever. Okay, we're gonna switch gears. Somebody tell me about bullying. It's like my number one thing that I can't stand when a parent comes and says my kid's being bullied. Why? Somebody said I hate a bully. Why do I hate when parents come and tell me their kid's being bullied? Because sometimes they take bullying as anything a kid does. Anytime a kid says something mean or looks at them the wrong way or anything their kid comes home and says negative about another kid is bullying. Everything's bullying, right? And for us as camp directors and child care directors, there's a difference. And so a lot of my job when they come and say, my kid's being bullied, is to ask some more detailed questions. Detailed questions. Tell me about the situation that is happening. I want to know about the kids. Is there an imbalance of power? Bullying requires an imbalance of power. If it's two kids calling names at each other, they're being kids. That's not bullying. But an imbalance of power, things like physical strength, older, they might have they know embarrassing information about the other kid. Your middle school kids, guys, it happens. You guys are all high school students, you probably know it happens. Kids share pictures, they get talked into sharing pictures. Somebody else has that picture, now they're holding it over them. That happens. It happens at like 9. Like, they're little. You guys think like, oh, 15, 16. No. Sometimes this is like 9 years old. Okay? So they have embarrassing information. And sometimes that embarrassing information is embarrassing to the kid, but to even us as adults, it might not feel embarrassing. It might be something like mom and dad are splitting up, and that kid is really embarrassed about that, because in their friend group, all their friends' parents are together. Or it might be something like, mom got arrested last night, and my neighbor knows about it and is coming to camp and telling everybody else. So these things happen to our kids, and it could be stuff that they're embarrassed about, but only one person knows, and they're not gonna tell you. But the bully knows it, okay? The other stuff, this happens a lot more with the girls than the boys, but it still happens with boys, is the popularity, bullying through popularity. The imbalance of power that happens when I'm popular, and I can get a crowd of girls to follow me. And they follow me because they know I'm the bully. So they know it's safer to follow me and join in the bullying than it is to stand up to the bully. Okay, that's what we mean by imbalance of power with popularity. But the big thing with the balance of power is they're using that imbalance of power to control or do something to the person they're bullying. The power imbalances can change over time and in different situations, even if they involve the same kids. So depending on the situation, that balance of power might shift. I might be the bigger kid, and on the basketball court, I'm not bullied. But you also know something embarrassing about me, and every place else I am, but I don't do it on the basketball court because you might make me look stupid. Okay? But really key fact is imbalance of power. Really important. The other thing about bullying is even if there's an imbalance of power and something happens, doesn't make it bullying. The next thing that bullying requires to be bullying is repetition. It has to happen multiple times. One incident is just an incident. It's not bullying. And then bullying can be things like physical stuff, right? Pushing, shoving, all of those things. Verbal attacks. It can be spreading rumors. It can be attacking somebody. All too much, even really little kids. Bullying now that starts at camp, goes home on social media, spreads like crazy on social media, and comes back to camp the next day. And so we as camp directors are trying to police stuff that we have absolutely no control over. There was a summer at camp that I had to beg parents to take away devices, just take them away for one night. My staff can get a handle on this if you just cut it off tonight. Had to beg them to get the girls off the devices for a day. It happens. It's our job to be aware of it. Specifically, really specifically. Online, I'm looking for more specifics than that. I heard at the job, at home, I'm real specific. Possibly at the playground, where else? Huh? Social media, what else? Keep calling. School, in a classroom. Huh? When what?
When an authority figure isn't around.
You guys hear her? Where does bullying tend to happen? It happens when the adults aren't paying attention. Most bullies are not so brazen as to walk in the room and do it in front of you. Bullying, true bullying, the bullying that really matters, that we really have to stop, is the bullying that happens subtly. It's slow, it's pervasive, it's me walking up behind a kid and saying, I'm gonna get you later. Okay? Two kids, if I'm a kid, right? They're walking up behind another kid and very quietly saying something like that, right? I have your picture, do you want me to show it to George? And it's very quiet, so as an adult in the room, you don't see it. When you see this behavior, it is usually not bullying. What you need to worry about is that behavior that is subtle, that is happening through body language. If the bully has got a lot of control over the kid, eventually it becomes silent. I can just walk in the room and stare. Got you. Right? I stared at you, right? You know it, you felt it. I can walk in and I can do that as a bully. That's the stuff you guys have to pay attention for. That's the stuff you have to look for. And when a parent is saying my kid's being bullied, sometimes our first reaction is no way. Didn't see it. Not happening. Sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong. But the most important thing I want you guys to get out of bullying, imbalance of power, repetition, and it's quiet. It happens super subtly. It happens in the corners of locker rooms. It happens on the playground underneath the slide. It happens on the back of the bus. It doesn't usually happen when you're right next to me. And so when I have a kid whose parent says they're being bullied, one of the first things I say is that the counselor now needs to be their best friend. So if you think your kid is being bullied, you're not my buddy. You're going everywhere with me, because can you be bullied if I'm right here? Because your bully is probably not gonna do it if the adult is paying attention, okay? So you need to look for that. You're looking for your kids who are outsiders. What's making them an outsider? Is it just because they're an introvert? Some of us are. This is draining, guys. Doing this for 2 days straight, I only want to do is sleep. I'm an introvert. This is not where I love to necessarily be all the time. But some of us are like that, and it's okay if that's why I'm sitting on the side and don't want to engage. But if I'm not engaging because the popularity of the group has made it so I don't even want to, that's different. So you're looking for bullying to happen in all the quiet corners of the room. What's next? Did we do this yet? No? Kind of. This is kind of this little bit of a repetition of the other slide, but it's similar but different, so I'll hit it really fast. This is talking about checking yourself. Are your own expectations for the kid's behavior creating unnecessary conflict? Okay? And some of the examples it gives. Did I explain the directions clearly? Are the kids now arguing over the rules for Uno because I didn't tell them that when I play Uno, what is the one that everybody always does? They stack cards, okay? But when they play Uno, wherever they came from, they didn't stack cards. And now they're arguing because I didn't give them rules. I didn't make it clear. Or are the rules, I didn't give them any rules. I said go to the gym and play basketball, but I didn't say make sure everybody gets a turn at the basketball. So I have a basketball and I'm hogging the basketball and everybody else is not getting a turn. I promise you guys in camp, that's like the number one reason kids get in fights, is fighting over the ball. Just get more balls. Other one that I see a ton of counselors, especially if you're in a camp in a building, this is more true than if you're in an outdoor camp. Do kids need to walk in a straight line all the time? Why do we do it? Why do your teachers do it? So sometimes because they want to keep account of the kids. Why else do they sometimes want kids to walk in a line? Yeah, Alex. All right, so like getting kids to listen, follow directions. I heard somebody else over here say control. So you can see everything that is happening, but sometimes it's the other, go ahead. Sometimes it's the other kind of control. I just want to feel like I'm in power. I'm the adult and I said so, walk in a straight line.
Walking in a crowd, especially with other groups around you, kids can get mixed up.
Okay, so that's a really important one. If the hallway's narrow and there's another group coming, I don't want my kids to mix, right? I want my group to stay with me. So there are times when walking in a line makes sense. But there's other times when it's just me trying to control you. Or in this moment, it doesn't have to happen that way. Is the behavior that's happening in this group bothering me personally? Or is it disrupting what the group is trying to accomplish? Right? Thinking about that video with Mr. Jensen, is the drumming, the tapping, is it bothering the whole class or is it just irritating to me as the adult? If you ignore the behavior or focus on other kids' positive behaviors, might it stop? I've given you guys lots of stories. This one's like just in the last year, I was helping cover an after-school site, and there was a little girl there. I haven't been back, by the way, because there are kids that drive you crazy. Little girl there who was 100% attention-seeking, wanted attention, and I was like not gonna give it for bad behavior, right? And so I was actively like, you're doing a great job. Oh my God, you're doing so good. You're doing so good. And she kept leveling up her misbehavior. And then would ask me, how am I doing? And I just ignored her. And I kept ignoring it, right? Like she wasn't doing anything unsafe, it was just naughty. And eventually, she said, how come you're not telling me what I'm doing? And one of the other little fourth graders next to her said, she's waiting for you to do something good. And like the kids had picked up on it, right? But if you ignore the behavior, can you get it to stop? She's like one that didn't work for, but usually it works. They start to figure it out. But the other little girl told her and she was like, oh, so if I'm good, you're gonna say something? Yeah. And so then the other student got her to change her behavior. But is your reaction rewarding the child or reinforcing the negative behavior? I knew that's what that little girl wanted and I was not giving it that day. I knew that if I reacted to her negative behavior, it was going to be twice as bad in a second.
I'm going to jump in here. One of the key things you'll learn is to pick your battles. One of the last things I had happen at the Y before I left was one of my counselors that were underneath me spent all day arguing with a kid because they wanted to keep their book bag with them. They did not want to leave this book bag alone. They spent the whole day arguing. Come back the next day, same thing. And my counselor came up to me and said, how do I handle this? It's too much of an issue to argue with them again all day. To which I looked at this counselor and I asked, well, what trouble is it causing to have a book bag? Why are we picking a battle? You know, some kids have bonds to certain things. If he's taking his book bag with him, it's not being a problem. Why are we making a problem out of it? Not everything needs to be addressed if it's small enough, you know what I mean?